Another presidential election is just around the corner. In the past couple of weeks, we witnessed numerous filings of certificates of candidacy by politicians who were vying for electoral posts on all levels. Several issues emerged regarding political parties, election campaigns, and the Filipino voting behavior. This is why we believe now is a great time to talk about Philippine elections and political parties in historical terms. Because party switching and political turncoatism,
Anomalous campaigns pending?
Celebrities turned politicians and the quote-unquote odd voting behavior among Filipino voters?
hindi na bago yan. I am Beccal Porha,
I am Lee Candelaria.
And I am Aaron Maliari.
and we are back with a new season of podcasts, conversations on Philippine history, politics, and society.
Alright, I am pumped. Medyo mahaba-haba din yung naging break natin between the previous season and this new season. But now, we are back with a brand new season.
Yes, so we are calling this season Hindi na Bago Yan because we believe that most of the issues that confront us as nations, as a society, and as a people ay hindi na bago. These are all stuff of history as well.
And we are launching this season with a conversation on Philippine elections. And to share his insights on this topic, we talked to one of the top scholars of Philippine politics today, Professor Julio Julay T. Hankey of De La Salle University. So how would Professor T. Hankey characterize Philippine elections, or maybe Philippine politics?
The Philippines takes pride in being one of the oldest democracies in the Asian region. In fact, it is the oldest electoral democracy in Southeast Asia. And yet, despite this rich and rich history in elections and democracy, the Philippines has maintained what we call a clientelistic and patronage-based politics. So it's largely personalistic. It's still dependent on the elites, and it is detrimental to majority of the people. And that is perhaps the reason why we have still to achieve development in our country. We've inherited our party system from the colonial past. We're supposedly tutored by the great democratic United States of America in the ways of democracy. And yet, what they have succeeded is really just to transplant their way of doing politics into a feudal setup. And that feudal setup has not changed because, of course, for so many reasons, real change did not occur in all this electoral competition throughout the different periods in Philippine history.
That was a very succinct way to really describe Philippine politics. Patronage-based, clientelistic, personalistic. And I think Sir July was on point in tracing back this kind of democracy that we have to the American period. Kasi nga, di ba, hindi na bago yan.
And by implication, therefore, sinasabi na talagang failure yung democratic tutelage na ginawa ng mga Amerikano, kahit na yan naman talaga yung ginamit nila to justify the American colonization in the Philippines. So Professor T. Hankey pointed out that the beginnings of political parties in the Philippines started at this period. So yung earliest political parties in the country appeared during the early years of the American colonization when they started the Philippine Organic Act. Okay, so nabuo yung mga partido. Pero yung, I think, pinakamahalagang election, which later really shaped Philippine politics, happened in 1907 with the passage of the election law. Okay, so kung saan, itong batas na ito, it created the Philippine Assembly. At itong Philippine Assembly ay nagsilbi siyang parang lower house. So it turned the legislative at this period into a bicameral one. So yung upper house was composed of the American appointed Philippine Commission and the Philippine Assembly ay yun nga nagsilbing lower house. Ngayon, etong Philippine Assembly was to be composed of 81 district representatives. So 81 districts yung binuo at kada isang distrito ay may isang representante. And actually, in the first election of the Philippine Assembly, dalawang partido talaga yung nangibabaw. The Partido Nacionalista and the Partido Progresista. So, ang contention dyan at this period was that the Nacionalistas were advocating for immediate, absolute, and complete independence, Well, the progresistas believed that at this period, we weren't ready yet for independence and self-governance. Well, in this contention, syempre, ang nanalo at ang nanaig ay yung nasyonalista na nagkataglay ng independence trope.
And by 1916, naipasa naman yung Philippine Autonomy Act or yung Jones Law. So dito naman, nabuo ang unang Philippine Senate. So meaning, this time, pareho nang consisted of elected officials ang legislative chambers. And in the 1916 elections, nanaig muli ang Partido Nacionalista. And for the most part of the American period, there was virtually a one-party rule kasi malakas talaga sila with Manuel Quezon and Sergio Osmeña at the helm. Manuel Quezon was Senate President and Osmeña was House Speaker in a legislature dominated by the Nacionalista.
And both these politicians lobbied long and hard for Philippine independence. May discussion na tayo on Quezon's career in the last season, but the point of mentioning Quezon right now or talking about Quezon was that Partido Nacionalista dominated the elections during the American occupation and continued to win after the establishment of the Philippine Commonwealth in 1935. Siyempre, may mga internal squabbles din yan. For example, in 1922, the rivalry between Quezon and Osmeña intensified so much so that the party was split between Quezon and Osmeña supporters. So for a time, nagkaroon ng Partido Nacionalista Kolektivista. The minority parties at this period included Partido Demokrata, the Sakdal Party, and the Partido Komunista ng Pilipinas, and the Socialist Party. Meron ding Partido Obrero o Partido ng mga Manggagawa. Itong mga maliliit na partidong ito, kumbaga, yung nagsilbing opposition sa nasyonalista in the pre-war years.
So, talagang noon pa man, parang multi-party system na talaga yung umiiral. Kahit obvious naman na dominated ng mga partido na binubuo ng mga elite ang politika ng bansa. And after the war, mababasag yung single-party domination ng nasyonalista sa paglitaw ng bagong partido, yung Partido Liberal, led by Manuel Rojas. Maganda yung pagkakakwento ni Sir July dito.
At a certain point, no, after the war, no, when we have gained our independence, no, from the United States, no, during the post-war republic, we had what is now familiar to some as a formal two-party system, in which we had two parties alternating power, no, every electoral cycle. No, so it is patterned after the same American style of party system, no? Two-party. In the Philippines, what we had was the Nacionalista Party, which was the dominant party during the colonial period. It is the oldest party in the Philippines, founded in 1907, and it was headed the great leaders of that time, no, who supposedly fought for Philippine independence. No, so in the literature, this is what we refer to as nationalist parties. No, so Manuel Quezon and then Sergio Osmeña and then later on Manuel Rojas. After the war, the faction of Manuel Quezon supported Manuel Rojas to form the Nacionalista Party Liberal Wing, which eventually won the very first presidential election after the war in 1946. And then by 1947, it renamed itself the Liberal Party. And then from there on, we had this exchange of power between the liberals and the nationalistas, with Rojas, then Quirino, and then Quirino would be defeated by Magsaysay. Magsaysay would die. Magsaysay was an original liberal who transferred to the Nacionalista Party, and then his Vice President Garcia, but Garcia will be defeated by another liberal, Diosdado Macapagal, but Macapagal would be defeated by a former liberal who turned nationalista, Ferdinand Marcos. And the rest is history. Marcos destroyed that two-party system by establishing his one-party dictatorship. And he carved a super party out of the carcasses of the Nacionalista Party and the Liberal Party. And that's what has become the Kilusang Bagong Lipunan or the KBL.
So ayun, nabanggit yung simula ng party switching dito sa panayam na to. And he named Ramon Magsaysay as the first post-war presidential candidate to switch parties during his election in 1953. Yung episode natin on Ramon Magsaysay in the second season, diniscuss natin to. And of course, another president who transferred to another party was no other than Ferdinand Marcos. Marcos was originally a liberal who transferred to the Nacionalistas when his party opted for the incumbent Diosdado Macapagal as its standard bearer in 1965. So during his first and second presidential runs, Marcos was nationalista. But after making himself a dictator, he virtually killed these two parties and formed a mega party that he called the Kilusang Bagong Lipunan or KBL. But of course, the strength of the KBL was ultimately dependent on Marcos. So after his ouster, umusbong na formally yung talagang multi-party system sa Pilipinas. But what is fundamentally wrong about the multi-party system? Here is Sir July.
So after EDSA, after 1986, we have seen the emergence of what is known as a multi-party system. And that's the reason why we have all this alphabet soup of political parties, no? So, ang tanong, no, bakit napakadaming partido, no? Karamihan sa ating mga kababayan sinasabi, ay sana ibalik na lang natin doon sa two-party system, no? Or may mga matatalinong mambabatas na sasabihin, I will pass a law that will return us to the two-party system. Excuse me lang po, mali po yun, no? Dahil ang multi-party system ay produkto ng iyong electoral system, no? At hindi po siya basta-basta mababago. Ang anomalya sa sistema natin ay when we restored formal democracy, originally, during the Marcos period, we were functioning under a parliamentary system. And according to the literature, no, pag ikaw ay parliamentary system, mas mainam sa iyo ang maraming partido. Kasi ang parliament ay labanan ng mga partido at sila'y mamimili ng prime minister. Pag ikaw ay presidential system, mas madalas na ito ay two-party system. In the Philippines, no, what happened after EDSA was that from parliamentary we transitioned to presidential. But in the framing of our constitution also, no, there was a mix-up, no? We institutionalized a multi-party system under a presidential form of government.
Anomalous talaga, no? Kasi halimbawa in Germany, parliamentary system, kaya understandable na multi-party sila. Tapos come election time, these parties form coalitions in order to create a government. So sa Pilipinas, hindi nangyayari yun because of our presidential form of government. Instead, according to Professor Tihanki, the rules governing our party system at present only allowed for any politician to form a party and thus made party switching or balimbing politics to flourish. Kaya nga 'di ba, someone like Isko Moreno jumped from Nacionalista to UNA to PMP to NUP and now to Aksyon Demokratiko from 2006 to 2021. Let's listen to Professor Tihanki's narration about this unique phenomenon.
All the rules and regulations have allowed political parties, personalities to split and form their own parties. No? So because we also have the highest number or highest percentage of party switching in the world, no? Tinatawag nating balimbing politics, no? Political turncoatism, no? Dito lang sa Pilipinas uso yung turncoatism kasi sa actual literature ang ginagamit ay party switching, no? Yung patalon-talon. So, ang nangyari nung panahon ni Marcos, lahat tumalon sa KBL dahil yun ang pinakamalakas at doon sila makakakuha ng patronage. After EDSA, yung kapatid ni Tita Cory nagbuo ng parang KBL na partido, yung LDP, no, Laban ng Demokratikong Pilipino. So nagtalunan lahat ng mga KBL at iba't ibang politiko sa LDP. After LDP, nagkaroon ng maliit na partido si President Ramos, then candidate Ramos, yung Lakas, no? Lakas EDSA, Lakas NUCD, no? nung siya ay nanalo, nagtalunan lahat, and then later on, nagtalunan kay ERAP, yung laban ng makabayang masang Pilipino. Tapos nung nasipa si ERAP sa EDSA 2, tumalo naman sila kay Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, una sa Lakas, then later on yung partido ni Gloria nakampi, and then lahat nagsitalunan sa Liberal Party nung panahon ni Noy Noy, at nung nanalo si Digong, lahat ay nag-PDP laban. So mukhang alam natin kung saan papunta itong kwentong to. No? So eventually, nakikita na natin yung disintegration ng PDP laban dahil tumataya na ang mga iba't ibang politiko sa ibang partido.
So party politics in the Philippines is really crazily out of control. Parang political parties were, able to drive themselves to a certain level of chaos or anarchy to the point na halos irrelevant na ang usapin ng partido sa pagpili ng mga ibabotong politiko. And I think ang pinakamagandang halimbawa dyan ay si Rodrigo Duterte at ang kanyang relasyon sa PDP laban. Kasi baliktad di ba? Instead of the party carrying the candidate, in 2016, si Duterte ang nagbuhat sa PDP laban. So, he saved his party from obscurity at tinan nyo naman ngayon, leader sila ng supermajority ng kasalukuyang administrasyon. But according to Tihanki, the insignificance of PDP Laban's contribution to the phenomenal victory of Duterte paved the way for the creation of smaller and newer political parties that are all pro-administration. So, paano niyan lalong pinagulo yung multi-party system natin? Pakinggan natin si Sir July.
The result of that was that in 2018, Professor Yuko Kasuya and I observed that compared to the other administration parties in the past, only a few candidates run under PDP Laban. And they opted to run with other parties that were aligned with the administration. And then, aside from not running under PDP Laban, there were other pro-Duterte parties that were formed. 2 or 3 Duterte parties that were formed. So now you have a surplus of administration parties. So you don't have to join PDP Laban to get the favors from the administration. So this is what we term an anarchy of party, because the status of the administration party has been cheapened. Ibig sabihin, sa mata ng mga politiko, kahit naman di na ako sumama sa PDP, sasama na ako sa iba. And ironically, one of the biggest challenge to PDP in 2019 were not the other parties, but a regional party that was founded by the daughter, yung hugpong ng pagbabago. So yan ang sitwasyon natin ngayon. At imbes na mag-consolidate ang mga partido para ma-consolidate ang demokrasya, ang nako-consolidate lamang ay kapangyarihan ng iilan na mga dynasties at mga pangsariling interest.
Anarchy of parties. So yung magulo ng post-EDSA party system natin, mas gumulo pa. So if you are a voter at ganito ka-anarchic ang mga political parties, magiging interesado ka bang intindihin sila when you are confronted with concerns on your very survival on a daily basis? So in that sense, we would really need to question the way we frame elections. Why does it always feel like the burden to get to know your candidate and choosing the right leader fall on the shoulders of the people? Professor Tihanki had a very insightful comment on this issue.
Mali yung sinasabi ng karamihan na bobo ang mga botante natin. Yan ang unang-unang sasabihin kong hindi. Bilang isang political scientist, mali. At sa kakasabi nyo ng bobo ang mga bobotante, lalong nagagalit ang mga botante. At lalo kayong inaasar, kaya naboboto yung mga katulad nila Digong, nila Duterte. Di ba? So, yun ang ako, hindi ako naniniwala na bobo ang botante. In fact, from the perspective of political science, there was one author, Samuel Popkin, who wrote The Reasoning Voter. At para kay Samuel Popkin, ang botante kasi hindi naman lahat ng ginawa, halimbawa ni VP Lenny, matatandaan ng botante, no? Hindi lahat ng ginawa ni Pinoy, no, matatandaan ng mga botante, no? Kasi ang botante may kanya-kanyang suliranin sa pang-araw-araw, no? Lalong-lalo na yung mga mahihirap, no? Wala silang hindi dahil bobo sila, hindi dahil, di ba? Kasi wala silang panahon dahil yung mabuhay ka lang ng isang araw, lalong-lalo na sa gitna ng pandemya, napakahirap na, no? Paano ka pa mag-iisip tungkol sa, let's face it, no? Human rights, no? Yung mga malalaking issue na talaga namang may epekto sa bansa natin, no? West Philippine Sea. Hindi mo mapipilit ang ordinaryong mamamayan na isipin yan, no? Because of law information rationality, sabi ni Samuel Papkin, no? Ang ibig sabihin nito, no, ang tingin lang nila kasi nga may information asymmetry, no. Hindi naman lahat yan nakikita ng mga botante. So gumagawa sila ng sarili nilang narrative sa utak nila base dun sa mga nakikita nila sa mga personalidad at politiko sa kapaligiran nila, no. So halimbawa, pag walang sistema ng hustisya at mabagal ang mga pulis at wala kang malalapitan sa gobyerno, sino lalapitan mo? Nandyan si Rafi Tulfo. Di ba? At saka, kung walang-wala ka na, tapos hindi, naghihirap ka, wala kang pambili ng tablet para sa anak mo sa online class, nandyan naman si Kuya Willie Rebillame na namimigay ng tablet araw-araw. Di siyempre sila yung pagdating ngayon sa halalan, kahit sabihin natin na iba ang trabaho ng senador sa executive, di ba? Yun yung nabubuo sa utak ng mamamayan, no? Ngayon, kasalanan ba ito nila Willie? Kasalanan ba ito nila Rafi Tulfo? Hindi. Kasalanan ba ng mga botante? Hindi rin. Kasi kasalanan nung sistema na pinairal natin ng ganito, no?
That just, makes perfect sense. Tama parang the people don't really get to participate in politics, in genuine terms. Our democracy is very superficial to say the least. Tapos, kapag yung mga tao, they made electoral choices based on their experiences and their needs, sisihin sila, di ba? Parang, I think it is always imperative to look at the systemic underpinnings of the character of our elections. Hindi sapat yung voters education campaign because clearly, the voters are not the problem.
That's right. And Professor Tihanki had something to say about what should be done instead.
Unang-una, from the perspective of the voters, no, ako naniniwala na hindi voters education, no. Medyo uncomfortable ako sa term na voters education. I would like to call it civic education, no, or political education. Kasi for under civic education program, you're not only educating the voters, you're also educating the politicians. No? So it's not simply a question of voters education. No? You should also educate the politicians that they're in it for public service and not for private gains. No? What is sad about our system of politics as we are now seeing, in all these Senate hearings is that even the so-called young people are attracted to government for the wrong reasons, to earn not only millions but even billions. No? So yun yung nakakalungkot nun. So alam mo, after the Second World War in Germany, the German people had an introspection, a national introspection on how come somebody like Hitler can be elected under a democracy. No? And they realized that there was something wrong with their democracy. No? So the very first thing that they did was really to empower the political parties to be the agents of civic education.
So, civic education. Siyempre, marami pa talagang kailangan gawin, but I think this idea by Professor Tihanki is very innovative. O pwede rin bang revolutionary, no? Kasi it shifts not only the burden of making this country better from the people to the leaders, but also the discourse. Baka nga naman ang kailangan talaga magbago at baguhin ay yung mga nasa poder. Kasi nga, the change that we need is not on the individual level. It's on the system.
Exactly. And as Prof. Tehanki mentioned, there are both medium and long-term reforms that should be done and should be achievable with a real sense of political will that would confront long-standing problems of our democracy like political dynasties, our feeble political parties na ngayon ay sa totoo lang ay naging clique na lang ng mga elite na politiko, and even the Constitution itself. And this would allow us to make important changes in the way we do elections or even politics in general. Prof. Tehanki had, several ideas like the synchronized elections and a serious conversation on constitutional reforms.
Professor Tehanki had a lot of ideas regarding constitutional reform. Pero sa kaduluduluhan, ang kailangan talagang unang gawin is for us, the people, or the young people specifically, to reclaim politics and to reclaim the future of the country post-COVID. I think that this juncture of crises can also serve as opportunities for us to change things and to change things radically.
And the proverbial mic has been dropped.
That's it for our pilot episode of Hindi na Bago Yan. Sana maraming kayong napulot at natutunan, and tune in for new episodes every week.
Yes, tuloy-tuloy pa din ang ating monthly wrap-up every end of the month. So kahit off-season kami the past 2 months, we had our regular monthly wrap-up. So if you haven't listened to them yet, balikan nyo na.
As usual, follow us on our social media pages and drop us comments and messages for your feedback and suggestions.
At syempre, visit our website, www.podcast.org. Kasi in the interest of brevity, we have spliced our interviews. But if you are interested in listening to the full interview like this one with Professor Julio Tehanki, these are all uploaded in our website with consent of Sir July, of course. So, once again, thank you very much for listening. And as always, have a good day.